Here we fucking go. Here we go. Well, hello and welcome into this Saturdays, because it's usually a Friday we do it. This Saturday's stream, start how you mean to go on and all that jazz, guys. It's a bit of a car crash, but that's us. That's me. That's MBE. My name's John C. Walsh. I'm your host on the stream, stroke show, stroke podcast, whatever you want to call it tonight. Joining me to the left is Stephen John McLaughlin. He's the co-host. We're going to be discussing Muzak. Stephen, 90s Muzak and anniversaries for big bands. In this case, Oasis primarily, going to discuss them at the start, because it's the more recent news, but I know we're going to branch off and discuss R.E.M. And one of their most iconic releases. But obviously, Stephen, Oasis have made a big announcement yesterday, my birthday, incidentally, 36 years old, fucking hell. Releasing an anniversary edition, I believe a limited edition vinyl release of Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. It's 25 years old.
Standing on the shoulder?
The shoulder,
Giants,
not the shoulders. The shooters. The shooter of Giants. That's a classic Scottish word, shooter. But yeah, Steve, I'm going to discuss this news. Is it something that you're intrigued by right off the bat? I'm going to throw that over to you.
Yeah.
This is an interesting album because it's kind of sandwiched between very clear, youthful, vibrant, chaotic Oasis from the 1990s and the more mellow and older and slightly... Stephen, I don't know about you, but I view Oasis as almost like two different bands in my mind. That the 90s stuff was just a tour de force, fucking centre of the hurricane, all sort of chaos going on around them, almost like the Beatles during Beatlemania.
Phenomena, yeah.
Phenomenon, yeah, like lightning in a bottle. You'd see the Nebworth sort of gigs in the mid-90s. It's fucking chaotic, it's crazy, you have to be there. I think they actually said that, you know what I mean?
They really did capture the public imagination between 1994 and 1997, I want to say.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. You talk
after
about
that, Steve, the 2000s, it's totally different. It's a totally different era.
It's sound and just approach and everything was totally different production. But I know we'll get into obviously the reasons in particular for this album and all the sort of chaos around it and the sort of complications in terms of personal stuff and restructuring of the band and all that. But John, this album's sandwiched, as you said, it's in between Be Here Now and I think Hindu Times, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe someone can correct me.
No, it is, yeah. Be Here Now was 97, Hindu Times was 2000 and I believe 2. What to say?
And I mean, you talk about obviously the lineup had to change as well, which obviously that'll give you a different sound right away to the sort of founding members. I want to say leaving. I think they left on their own accord, perhaps maybe. But I think just a lot of things were going on at that point, and I was actually watching a Noel Gallagher interview earlier today in terms of Be Here Now, and he was talking about they made a mistake going right back into the studio to do the third album. They should have gave it time after What's the Story, Morning Glory and Nebworth, as you said, and let the dust settle and go on a holiday, go their separate ways, he said, and just let that sort of play itself out until obviously people were ready for the next album. But it didn't take that approach. The American tour didn't go so well. They came back early, it was a disaster, and they went right into that album. This one's a totally different thing again, but just the same chaos coming in, John. You had to set up a new record label, Big Brother. Alan McGee had closed down Creation Records. Obviously, Bonehead and Giggsy had left the band, and their ever reliable Owen Morris was replaced, their producer, with Mark Spike Stent. So, new producer, new lineup. And I think for the biggest part as well, I think most of the sort of tracks on Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, I think Noel did most of the instruments because he hadn't yet got the band together. People may correct me if I'm wrong in that, but just try to remember, maybe I'm misremembering, but I remember they didn't really have the band together when the recording of the album was taking place. Obviously, the promotion and the videos, you had the new band members in place, but I think for the recording it was a bit chaotic.
That sounds similar to Foo Fighters. After the initial Foo Fighters 95, obviously it was Dave Grohl recorded all of the instruments. It was a demo tape, took it to, I don't think he was even interested in taking it to a studio, but I think someone persuaded him to do it. Then obviously in the subsequent album, Colour and the Shape of, I think that's the name of it, he went back and re-recorded all the drum stuff. And then Taylor Hawkins came in and they toured, but initially he was doing all the heavy lifting, so it's quite interesting that happens quite a lot with bands, certainly in the 90s, that they did take on. But I mean, Steve, we were discussing though before we came on here, and I don't want to blame him for obviously Bonehead. I mean, I've searched up gigs saying why he left. He left because of family reasons. He had a young son at the time and he just didn't want to spend time away from his son and his wife, so he left. Bonehead, I never did delve into why Bonehead left. I don't know if it was like issues with him and the two brothers, where he was just sick and tired of being around those two, because those two could be hard fucking work. I know they could.
I think I watched, I don't know if it was perhaps
maybe
about 5 or 6 years ago, but I seem to recall there was some sort of conversation going about. I don't know whether it's true or not, if it's just one of those myths that both Gallagher brothers had cleaned themselves up in terms of drugs and drink. By the year 2000, they weren't taking drugs, they weren't drinking. Bonehead liked his wine and he liked his beer, and I don't think he was having it. So I think there was a bit of, I may be wrong, maybe that's allegedly, but yeah, I mean,
Liam, that doesn't sound like Liam at that.
Well, I remember an interview in Q magazine round about the time just before the album came out, and this was his pose for the Q magazine front cover.
Oh yeah. I mean, we know he went down that fitness sort of vibe, didn't he? And he started running and getting up early, and he really did tone down probably the drugs and whatnot. I think he still likes a tipple, even now he likes a tipple, but he definitely did change his ways. And also he had kids as well, so when you become a parent, I wouldn't know, I'm not a parent, but obviously you'll know, Stephen, you kind of have to change your ways. Even if you're a rock and roll star, you have to become a little bit more sensible and delve time to the kids. So,
well, listen, John, in terms of track listings though, there is obviously 4 songs that were released as singles from the album. Go Let It Out, Where Did It All Go Wrong, Who Feels Love, and Sunday Morning Call. Now, I'm going to just talk about the fourth one.
I was listening to it before we came on. I wanted to get back and listen.
That track. I think it's a good single. Noel Gallagher hates that song. It's one of the worst songs, he says, that he's ever written.
But one's that?
I don't think it's a bad song at all. I think it's actually quite...
Is that Who Feels Love?
Sunday Morning Call.
I fucking love Sunday Morning Call. That's the best song on the album outside of Go Let It Out. He's talking nonsense. Without doubt, that's the best song. Just a great tune. The structure and all of it, his voice is brilliant. Though is the complete yin to the yang of Liam. Liam's got that really growling rock and roll persona and voice, and it powers the band through some of the more sort of earlier stuff, where it was a wall of noise and sound, guitars and just chaos. You need that growl. But Noel, by this point, I think was coming into his own, and I think that's where he started to realise. Obviously, that's 8 years prior to them splitting, but I think he realised as early as this point that he could go off and do his own thing. He knew, in terms of writing and just having that genius for music and putting songs out that were hits, that he was already far above his brother. His brother was a sort of necessary evil as a frontman. I think he realised at this point, vocally, he was coming into his own. And you can hear it with this album, Stephen. This album's completely different to be here now in the first two. It's a lot more mellow.
I think as well, it's very psychedelic.
It is, absolutely.
In terms of the sounds. And it's got an Indian influence as well, I think. You hear that in Who Feels Love.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about those 2 opening tracks is Go Let It Out and Who Feels Love. It's a continuous noise. There's no separation. You kind of just get right into it. I can't remember if it's a mellotron or something like that, sort of in between, but it just kind of rolls and it flows. And Go Let It Out was just something totally different, wasn't it? It was just something that after Be Here Now, which was no guy in his words, he said that the tracks on Be Here Now were the songs were not good enough for the first two albums. So you can sense that this is fresh. This is something different. I still prefer Be Here Now, ironically, but in terms of a different approach, I think it was quite brave. Maybe it was a forced approach. Maybe it was something that was out of their hands at the time. Obviously, with changing producers, changing record labels, I think changing lineups as well. It was a kind of forced issue. But I think in terms of how it came out, the sort of final product under all those circumstances, it's not a bad record.
I think the criticisms of Be Here Now would have probably struck a chord with Noel as well. He'd have took that really personal because he knows what he is. Guy's a fucking genius songwriter and just, like I say, genius in terms of music in general. Finding tunes that are going to work. I mean, you see that in the 90s. I mean, he was just hitting them out of the park. It was like Macca and Lennon in the 60s. Yeah. Obviously, there, in my mind anyway, I'm biased there, another level entirely. But in terms of just mining great tunes, one after another, I think he would have been affected by that criticism of Be Here Now and went out to do something different. I don't know if he'd
admit that, John, but I think you're right. I think anyone would, to be fair.
I mean, you said, Stephen, you openly admitted that the album wasn't anywhere near as good as the first two. They knew they were probably living in excess in terms of drugs and whatnot.
Have been, to be fair, they've never really superseded in terms of songwriting quality. Occasional there is nuggets within albums. You talk about Hindu Times. There's some really good songs in there. Little by Little being one of them, and it's just occasionally you will have those little nuggets. Whereas definitely maybe in What's the Story, I think every song was as good as you could get them. In terms of production, obviously Noel Gallagher is quite critical of himself. He did say that What's the Story was maybe overly produced in terms of just had a noise about it that probably wasn't necessary. And Be Here Now, he said it was just it was bloated in terms of production, just orchestras and
way too long. 6-7 minute long songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Just too long.
It can be overcritical, but maybe that's a defence mechanism. I can criticise my work, but don't you fucking dare.
Yeah, no, and listen, he's right. I love going back and listening to interviews of Noel from that time because he's very sure of himself and he's got every right to be. But he will be self-deprecating as well. And you require that as someone who's as brilliant as him. You have to kind of, I don't know, not self-assess, but you've got to be able to slap yourself down. And I think that's what separates them, being that working class sort of group. They came from nothing. They came from what I would call a shithole. I like to say I came from a shithole. I'm sure you, Stephen, would say, in terms of the areas we came from, rough and ready. I like to say shitholes. But that makes people, the best people come from those places.
I think the difference between Noel and Liam is that Noel will obviously see those sort of cracks appear, and I think Liam, in terms of, because maybe it's because he's not the songwriter, maybe it's because he doesn't spend as much time in the studio as Noel in those days. Perhaps maybe he just sees it differently, sees it from a different perspective. And I think it doesn't matter if it's out of tune because you're cool. That that's his attitude. It doesn't matter. It's fucking rock and roll. Just don't overthink it. No, but no, as the person he has to be in that band and his purpose in the band, he has to overthink it. He has to make sure everything is to the way that he envisioned it. And I didn't know this until I watched some of the documentaries, that he would have most of the songs ready-made for the band coming in and just replicating what he wanted. And that's a different approach to, say, the Beatles, who would work things out
work with each other,
and try and mould it into something that was more of a team effort, rather than a Noel Gallagher production. But Horses for Courses, it worked for them, and it worked for Noel.
I mean, I think the reason for that is obviously Liam. God bless him, I love Liam. What a character. One of the greatest frontmen ever. In terms of, like I say, the voice and the personality, iconic. Everyone's going to remember that guy 50, 60 years from now.
Yeah.
But he's not got the musical genius of a Paul McCartney or even a George Harrison. He's not gifted lyrically. In terms of musicianship, he's not really gifted in terms of playing the guitar or bass or whatnot.
That reminded me of his little spat he had with George Harrison when George had said
Yeah, he's made that remark,
No,
didn't he?
no, I don't think he referred to no as no. I think he just said, yeah, the older brother, he's good. He
I've
knows what
watched you,
he's doing.
Stephen. I hate
The other
these
one,
speakers are
I
shite.
don't think he needs him. He's just baggage. What he's doing is like stuff that people were doing, like Jagger, in the
Yeah.
70s. It's old hat. And I think Liam's response was, George is nothing but a nipple.
Which is classic Liam.
A
Not one
nipple.
for... No, I mean, to be fair, I love Harrison, and I love his ability to just get in there two-footed and destroy people, regardless of what they thought. I mean, he never held back. The guy was taking pot shots at Led Zeppelin. So if he's going to take pot shots at Led Zeppelin, I'm sorry, Liam Gallagher and Oasis are not fucking immune. No chance. But what he says, Stephen, about obviously out of tune and whatnot, not giving a shit, it's all right because you're cool, it's rock and roll. I think that's something you've seen going back years and years. I mean, reading about the Rolling Stones and obviously Keith Richards and the rest of the band being slightly out of tune, not really giving a shit, mucking around in the studio, and then someone like Mick Taylor comes in and he's a stickler for being in tune and doing it properly, and he's just like, what the fuck's going on here? This is meant to be one of the best rock and roll or the best bands on earth, and I'm coming in and they're playing out of tune. And he just kicks him into gear. You need someone like that. And having watched, obviously, Noel with that last album, that solo album we put out, there was a documentary. I've not seen the entire thing, but I mind watching big bits of it. Just seeing the way he operates in the studio. It's fucking fascinating. The guy is just brilliant.
Is this the Council Guys documentary? Yeah.
Yeah, he'd another guy, like a guitarist, doing solo work, but he'd already in his head kind of thought about what it was going to be, and he'd be discussing with the guy, and then they'd just sit down and make it work. It's just, I love shit like that. I love watching. And also, we were talking about it with the anthology stuff last night. Just being able to see that, I would love to be able to get my hands on the Beatles stuff, because just getting to see how these albums were put together, seeing the process. I've seen it with the Foo. I keep mentioning the Foo Fighters tonight, but we've seen it with what's the third album called from the Foo Fighters again? I'm blanking the fucking name. Terrible. One of my favourites with Aurora and all of that on it. But that was all done in a house in the middle of nowhere, and they kind of done it. They shot a documentary, and you're seeing Dave shouting fresh pot, wanting coffee and all that. You're just seeing the behind the scenes is always fascinating. That's why I'm really looking forward to this other sort of reunion side of Oasis, following them through this. I want to see every single part of that process, them getting in a room together for the first time and whatnot.
I know Liam did say roundabout during the announcement last year, I think in August time, about the reunion, that the Revolution will not be televised. It has to be. But we talked about it in our news show that they are planning on doing some behind the scenes stuff, which that's what we want. I would love to obviously see the actual gig streamed, on whatever platform. Maybe that may happen. Money talks, John, at the end of the day, and. I think they can sell this out 100 times, these gigs, and so getting a TV deal in place or, some kind of a pay-per-view thing, I don't think is impossible, not even at this stage in the game. We're only in February, we've still got another 5 months before these gigs kick off.
Yeah.
So I would like to see it. Yeah, I mean, you did your best, Johnny.
Hours on end.
And like tens of thousands of people are missing out on this. And
yeah, but they didn't get a second bite at the Ticketmaster gigs in Wembley. I did, and still get fucking nothing. Raging. Raging. I went down to Wembley to see them all day long.
It's more of a, for most people that are probably going, are big Oasis fans, obviously, but I think there'll be a chunk of people going just because they can say that they were there as well, and that's fair enough. But I think in terms of from the band's perspective, they want to see how this goes because obviously the relationship between the brothers over the past 15 years or so has been strained, and they're really just getting to know each other once again after a long period, 16 years or something like that, whatever it may be. I think it will be by the summer. 2009, wasn't it, the split? So it's been 16 years, and they really have to establish that relationship. I'm sure they have behind the scenes, John. We've talked about that as well.
Yeah, apparently they were having phone calls, weren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's good to, even if they weren't to do anything else, I think most people that have followed their careers and have some kind of attachment to them on a personal level are probably just happy to see, both brothers talking to each other again after all this time, because that's what you like to see anyway in terms of families and stuff like that. And I'm sure the mother, Peggy, I think her name is,
Yeah.
will be very, very happy with that outcome as well. So, but
And the
in
other,
terms
Gallagher, is it Paul?
Oh yeah, the older one. I think
Yeah.
he's the oldest, isn't he? Because
Mental,
Noel's
is
the
he?
middle child.
He looks like the two, but then he's kind of heavy set. That's me
It's
being,
funny, isn't it?
that's me being
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah.
He's the sort of go-between. I think he's
Yeah,
closer,
I mean,
maybe to Liam though. For sure.
If I was Paul, I'd be fucking raging.
So with that, you've got two brothers who are
Then
incredible
again,
fucking geniuses when it comes to music.
If I was James McLaughlin, I'd be
I
fucking
know.
raging.
I mean, I'd be fucking raging if I was James anyway, and I had hair like that. And my dad still got an incredible head of hair in his fucking 80s, and he's still jumping about lean. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? Clearly, I've not got my dad's genes. Is he still get his hair? So I'm going to blame my mother
He
on her
looks like
side.
Dad, though. You can tell him.
Yeah,
You
he
can
does,
tell
yeah.
that's his dad.
I mean,
There's
they
no
all
doubt
do.
about
I
it.
mean, that's why I always laugh at the whole Paul is dead bullshit. This sort of conspiracy. How in the fuck... You can explain maybe Paul, or, oh God, what is it, Billy Campbell, coming in and maybe getting plastic surgery. If you were really mental, you could maybe say, well, he's got state-of-the-art plastic surgery. It would have to be like Area 51 levels of advanced technology that's not been released to the public yet, though, because, I mean, not a fucking mark in his face. Exact same height, same proficiency with multiple instruments, same vocal range, same hair. But how do you explain the kids? I mean, they all look like him. They all look like Paul McCartney. Every fucking one of them. So surely they would all look like Billy Campbell prior to him having plastic surgery. This is where it all falls in its arse. That's nonsense. Unless the kids are in it as well and they're doing like plastic surgery on toddlers. I mean, it makes
They were all born after that. So they not know.
yeah, mental. Doesn't make any fucking sense. It's crazy.
Billy Campbell,
Nonsense. Billy Campbell, from Canada. Fucking hell. Canadian. What a load of shit. These people are mental.
It's going to fall on its arse, John. Continuity in this show. People will be looking at me drinking my beer, okay? You can see it. The next time I pick it up, it's going to be like that.
Yeah. That means Stephen's going deep in the second bottle. Shit's going to get interesting. Although Steve doesn't have to do the intros. So if we do reactions later on, then it is it's going to be interesting. That's for damn sure.
Cats again.
Oh God, I know. At least I'll get off the hook. I'll not be saying a thistle and treason again, because I'll make sure I say my words fucking clearly this time. You make one mistake and you don't get another chance at making the mistake when it's me. But Stephen, is this something you're intrigued by? I mean, I'm always interested in what the demographic is. It would be interested in getting out and buying a sort of anniversary release like this in a physical form, because they're releasing it as a vinyl, a limited edition vinyl. I don't know how many people out there who have got vinyls. I know my niece, your daughter. I always fucking hate talking like that, by the way, but I don't want to give too many details away because of the context of how we're talking here. But I know she's got a vinyl.
John, I was in HMV today, funnily enough, and the amount of kids that were down in the vinyl section was good to see. Yeah. Fantastic to see.
It's the best way to listen, Stephen.
And I think it's a thing. I don't know if it's just fashionable at the moment. I'm not sure, but I hope it's not. I hope it's a thing. People know the difference between listening to digital and listening to analog.
Lost your audio again. This is a nightmare. These speakers. You're back.
It should be okay, John. I'll listen to it back.
It's just me. I don't know why the speakers are cutting in and out, but it doesn't matter, Stephen. The other people can hate. The only people that matter are the people who are maybe watching. I don't matter.
I can understand us.
They can understand, very small number of people. They can understand you, just not me.
I'm actually going to show you something. I was actually in the town today, John, and happened to get this. I don't know if we can get this on camera or not, but wait till you see this.
Oh, is it fucking donuts? Oh my lord, look at that.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Is that not all for me, by the way.
Those it's based off The Simpsons?
Yeah,
that's fucking genius. That is absolutely genius. They look fucking good. Stephen, we've got a lot of good food places in Glasgow. To be fair, Glasgow gets a bit of stick at times for being uncultured which is a bullshit nonsense. Like the City of Culture, 20 years ago. We've had the Commonwealth Games and all sorts in those years. We've got some brilliant eateries, man, but I do want to try the other donut place.
We had the Glasgow Garden Festival, John.
Garden Festival. And we had the Coronation. Some shit back in the day, which of course the Celtics won the cup. With the tower, Coronation fucking tower thing, which was
Empire Exhibition.
Yeah, it was incredible. That was an incredible building. They pulled it down. It was temporary, just like in Paris. I think there was a connection with that. I'm sure there was some sort of. They tried to pull the Eiffel Tower down as well back in the day. I'm sure.
That was to do with World War II.
It may have been,
I think. They had to pull it down because it was a landmark.
Yeah, the Luftwaffe.
Too much of a landmark as a target.
Oh God, I know.
There you are.
Oh, I mean, if you listen to certain people...
I like going to Glasgow, John. It's a good place to hang out.
It is a good place. We've got some brilliant fucking food places.
Yeah.
Is it Torrance Donuts? Is that the other donuts place out in the West End? Torrance? Tantrum. I'm talking shite. Tantrum. I need to... You can see I've never been. But we've got some fucking brilliant places. That looks damn good. I do like a good donut.
We're in Bucks Bar today.
Oh, yeah.
In the Twingate. And their fried chicken is unbelievable.
Yeah, you'd try the wings.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Just really, really nice. I was actually saying that. I was saying I think John would like it here.
Yeah.
I'll have to go.
Steve, you know me, man. I'll eat anything. As long as it's not brain matter, I'm in. There's nothing I won't eat. I'll try everything. Brain matter, I was about to say heart, but then I do like haggis. And as we do know, it's like arseholes, heart and lungs, so... I mean, clearly I do like heart. It's just when you go to certain places and it's like Brazilian specialities and they're trying to give you the actual heart and you can see the heart and it's like, no, I'm not fucking eating that. I'm not eating chicken heart. Get that in the bin. But I mean, get back to this. Yeah, Viva Brazil. Yeah, I fucking love Viva Brazil back today. There's some infamous photographs of me sporting long hair when I had hair. Did I have hair? If you look at those photographs, you could fucking argue I didn't. Brushing hair from the back to the front to make it look as though I had a thick fringe. I vividly, and I'm going off piste here, but that's fine. That's the kind of show we're doing just now. I vividly remember in my mid-20s, because I had great hair in my teens, going into my early 20s, I had thick hair, intact hairline. As soon as I started growing my hair out in my mid-ish 20s, early to mid-20s, it started getting back. It's like, fuck you, bitch, you had your chance and you didn't take it, haha. It's like Ralph, haha. But I vividly remember looking at photographs of Chris Pine and whatnot and Daniel Radcliffe, because I'm still into Harry Potter, and thinking, why can I not have a thick head of hair like that? Because you've not got that hairline, John, you fucking twat. It's that simple. It really isn't difficult to work out. And that goes back to what I says about me having hair but not really having hair. I was in denial. But Viva Brazil, great. But Stephen, what he says about you...
That's what this show's about, John.
Hair, Viva Brazil, chicken hearts, haggis, lips and arseholes. Let's get back to Oasis. let's get back to Oasis. It's like a sort of Yorkshire Alan Partridge. And I'm Scottish.
That Oasis.
Oasis. What he says about young sort of generations floating around the vinyl thing, I find that fascinating. We do seem to be getting back. I watched Lemmy, brilliant comedian for those who don't know, talking about how the younger generations, I think the Zoomers and maybe younger, are getting into what 90s colognes. They're all wearing CK1 and Jean-Paul Gaultier and things like that. They're infatuated with the 90s, the 90s style, the sort of stonewashed jeans and things like that. I always find that fascinating. How they go through waves. It was the 80s, what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, Stranger Things.
Behavioural thing though, John, I think we've all done that. Yeah. I think when I was growing up, it was the 60s was an obsession. Hippie clothes and psychedelia and stuff like that. And it just continues on. As you said, 5, 6 years ago, Stranger Things came out and everyone was obsessed with the 80s. Although sort of warped version of the 1980s. And now it's the 1990s. Not a bad decade, is it?
No, and then we were discussing that in the 90s and the music. I think we're talking about Cooler Shaker. By the way, it was that fucking Tatava, is it? Is that the name of the song? That was definitely the song I heard on the radio. It wasn't a new. I thought Cooler Shaker had brought a new song out. I'm like, oh, listen to this. It's fucking 30 years old.
Yeah.
Clown Shoe.
That is good.
Clown Shoe. Yeah. But no, Stephen, there was a study done, and it's something that's hardwired into humanity, apparently. There's this sort of obsession with certain time periods. They'll go back time and again, but specific crazies pop up, but it's not like the most recent decade that we've went by, it's maybe 2 decades prior.
Yeah.
So in this case, fairly recently it was 80s, now we're kind of skipping beyond that and going to the 90s. It always seems to skip a decade, and apparently that has been a thing for a long, long time. I can't imagine the golden generation being obsessed with fucking cowboys and whatnot, though. Something tells me it's a more recent phenomena. But I mean, I'm not going to lie, I love the album, I do. It's one of my favourite, going back to Oasis, it is one of my least hated, shall we say. I mean, there's some Oasis albums I can take a leaf. I'll happily never listen to them. Like you said, Stephen, 1 or 2 songs. This feels to me like a sort of transitioning album in their sort of discography.
That's exactly
it's not the wall of sound, noise, whatever you want to call it, of the early years. It's not the sort of gratuitous masturbatory coke-fueled shit that was Be Here Now, but she's still got brilliant songs on it. They are doing sort of like Beatles style, transcendental shit and like meddling, pardon me, with Indian vibes and whatnot. There is some great songs in there, but it's not an album I'm going to go out and buy in a physical copy. It just isn't. And to be honest with you,
he had it in CD, John, and I borrowed it. I just didn't have the incline to get. I got definitely maybe on cassette. I think it was in '94, and then when What's the Story came
cassette,
out,
that's another fucking throwback, isn't it?
I got it in CD,
man,
and I think by that point I was moving on to the Verve and bands like that. And Standing in the Shoals of Giants for me is. I think you summed it up perfectly. Definitely a transitional period for the band, for the players in the band as well. The production was different. The way that
as I said, I was listening to it. Fucking brilliant, like guitar work and just the sonically where the songs are sitting. Totally different to the early stuff. The early stuff's legendary because it's just sheer rock and roll in your face.
Yeah.
But sonically a lot slower. I've actually did little notes because I'm a fucking gimp. So I listened to the album through because I wanted to listen to it, and I was just I'm going to do a little mental. Well, I didn't do mental notes. I physically typed it out in my notes, and I've got them sat here. It just says more mellow, far more mellow, sonically more mature, slower, brilliant arpeggiated guitar stuff going on. Just Noel's fucking tremendous in this album. His voice, his guitar work, everything. It's a great album, man. I think it's underrated.
I think
a lot shorter.
I think that was definitely. I think that was his sort of point though when he was talking about the break between What's the Story and Be Here Now. That was the break he should have took, the 3-year break. And that's what he did in this instance. From 97 to 2000, this is what he did. And as you said, it's the detail in the album that's so different. It's not rushed. It's not raw. It's not just sort of just producing and knocking out the records because you're part of that momentum from the first album or anything like that. It's something that they took their time with, or he's took his time with. They've got the band in. Obviously, he did most of the instruments on the album, as I recall, but he got it to the way that he wanted it, and it was just having that sort of 3-year period of being able to do that, and I think that's why. I still think Hindu Times is a better album, the follow-up.
Yeah.
Better songs on it, but you needed this album to sort of kickstart the sort of second part of the story with Oasis,
You've got songs like Little James in there as well, which you would never have heard Oasis doing
that was
5-6 years earlier. Never.
R.E.M song, wasn't it? It was his son, wasn't it?
Yeah, but apparently I'm reading about him just now because I actually didn't know the context. It was basically, it was your man from Simple Minds. Jim Kerr.
Yeah, he was Patsy Kendrick's, who was married to at the time. It was Jim Kerr's son, but he wrote about it was his stepson at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a great little song though. It conjured up sort of like John Lennon, late 70s, 80s, like obviously 1980, singing about Sean and being like a father and doing little things and just mellowing out. Again, that just kind of reflects on where they were at that point. So yeah, it's cool that they're doing it. I do like the anniversary releases, but I tend to just click on them and add them to my library on Apple Music now. I don't really go in for buying physical copies unless it's like a box set or something that's really cool and it's got a lot of little things like the Lennon stuff I got, and obviously you got it with Harrison, Stephen. I think you've got the Lennon one as well. You certainly get the anthology. And the Beatles one for 2009, that was fucking incredible. You had the booklets, you had the little things. Just that's a nice thing to have. But individual albums, I mean, I did do it with Paul McCartney. Obviously Wings, I'd get Band on the Run, had to get released.
That's right, yeah.
But in the main, I've moved away from physical media now, which is maybe a shame, to be fair, because the younger generation seem to be going back to physical media, and they've probably got it right. Because if we ever get hurt with a fucking...
through their folks, John, that's probably that, you know, it's the experience
that generation,
of buying music. It's the effort you have to put into it. You have to travel into the city or wherever your record store is. There's not many about, unfortunately. I think in Glasgow city centre there is only a handful. FOP and HMV.
But it was fucking great doing that, man. It was great. Being able to do that. I remember.
I used to smell the vinyl. I used to actually open up and smell it. It was amazing.
I'll readily admit I was never really a vinyl guy because it was maybe before I was more cassette. But I remember early 2000s. I mean, these are not probably the best example. We're talking about Oasis. We're about to talk about R.E.M. But I remember fucking what was it? What would have been the band? Certainly Kanye West, his first album.
Basement Jacks, maybe.
Outcast as well. I mean, going in and just picking them up and listening to it, and I'm like, this is fucking great. You don't really get that now. You don't get that sort of physical experience. Just clicking on it in a sort of streaming service, it just lacks that experience. Even going to like fucking Global Video back in the day and being there.
There's an effort in terms of listening to a vinyl on a record player where you can select the tracks by, counting the grooves.
Yeah.
And you can work out exactly where the song starts. It's too much of an effort, that. So you just basically put it on from the start to the finish, and that's the way you learn the album.
Yeah.
And it may take a couple of listens to really sort of sink into you. Whereas, as you said, digital downloads, you can you're basically just browsing more than anything.
But you lose something, Stephen, from that. And we're going to discuss that just now. That'll be a good point to bridge into this with R.E.M's Monster, because this is a perfect example of a band where I know their hits, but I've never ever went out my way to go through every single individual album and listen to all the albums. And that's a prime example of what we're talking about, or what you were talking about there. The downside to having these sort of digital streaming kind of things going on, where you can't just cherry pick, and you tend to gloss over lesser known stuff. If I did that back in the day, when prior to you, if streaming was a thing 15, 20 years ago, whenever the fuck it was, I started properly listening to the Beatles, fucking probably is coming up for... Is it coming up for nearly 20? No, it can't be. We're talking about what? It is nearly 20 years ago. Fucking hell. It's like 17, 18 years ago. 2007 was when I really started diving into the Beatles. You gave me a pirate disc with all the albums, and I just remember going through it bit by bit, individual, every single fucking song, album song, what would be deemed filler. There's no such thing as a filler song with the Beatles though. And just loving every single thing, discovering them, going on a journey. It was fantastic. If I had Apple Music or whatnot now, I'd just skip over it. I'd just listen. I'd look at the stars. Oh, there's a hit, bang, play it, move on.
I said to you before about that. When I think it was maybe around about the time you got the 2009 box set of the stereo albums, and there was a slight jealousy in that for myself, and I'm not a jealous person. But
no, I understand.
I just felt John's actually going through that journey that I remember so well, just discovering that music for the very first time. And it's something that you can't recreate. It's something you'll never feel again, and it's something that everyone has to experience. Anyone that's interested in music and finds a band that they really love or are interested in, when you get down those sort of first steps of listening to that first album right through to the last album, it's a journey more than anything. And you certainly got that with the Beatles, and I kind of relived that through yourself, because you would say to me, I've just listened to,
fucking hell, I thought it was Meatloaf at one point. That's how fucking clueless I was.
And I would be like, and what did you think? And you would be talking about that sort of feeling you had listening to Rubber Soul. That transition between Help and Rubber Soul, wow, man, just totally different. the Beatles in terms of their self-awareness. They knew where they were at. They knew in terms of how they wanted to craft their songs going forward, and always evolving. And you know, and just listening to you, just that excitement was something to be had. R.E.M. were like that as well, John.
Yeah,
For
Steve,
me,
I
you know,
tell you, I wish I was about, and all, I mean, I probably was about at this point, to be fair, because as we says, this is from a few months ago. It's 30 years old. I'd have been about six. Fucking
Well, came out in
shoe.
94, John, so you were 5 when this came
5
out.
or 6. It was 95, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd have been,
I mean,
what month was it in 95?
it was September. It was released.
I'd have been 6 at that point then. Yeah. So I wasn't really massively. I mean, I was into music back then. I was listening. I remember listening to Pulp and all of that. Fucking obsessed with his antics on the stage.
John, but sort of paint a picture for anyone that obviously it's a younger age and maybe not as invested in R.E.M. as myself. I'm not saying I'm an expert. There's people out there that know more about them than myself, but in terms of, because of my age, I was 12 when I was introduced to them. 11 actually, 1987. It's the End of the World as we know it, and I Feel Fine. Was released in the UK as a single, and I was just pulled in by that song. I went, oh, who is this band? This is incredible. And everyone else in my class was listening to fucking Wham and all that. And I just was blown away by R.E.M. at this point. Now, they were still on their IRS label at this point. They were still, I don't want to say they were deemed as an indie band at this point, but certainly in terms of mainstream in comparison to what was to come, this was certainly a lot more indie stuff. They signed up to Warner Brothers in 1988 with the album Green.
Yeah.
And that was my first album that I bought. And it was a couple of tracks right away, Turn You Inside Out, Orange Crush and Stand from that album. Incredible. And I didn't look back after that. What came after that, obviously Out of Time. We had Shiny Happy People, Losing My Religion, etc. on a fantastically acoustic orientated album, and similar to Automatic for the People, which came out the following year in 1992, a very acoustic sounding album. 1994 we get to, John. I remember where I was when I first heard What's the Frequency, Kenneth.
This is what I'm talking about, Stephen.
Fucking incredible, man. Telling you.
We spoke about this with the Beatles before.
Incredible.
In the 60s, that, I think, what you experienced with that is what people were experiencing when they were hearing fucking Sgt. Pepper's for the first time.
Yeah.
And hearing the new sort of transition into a new sound, new fucking maybe effects happening for the first time, just hearing that and think, fucking hell.
You know, when you look at, Michael Stipe, Mike Mills, Pete Burton, Bill Berry, their appearance and everything had changed. Bill Berry had grew his hair out. No longer did he look like John Denver, from the previous sort of music videos that we saw in Automatic for the People and Out of Time. This guy had grew his hair out. He was wearing some kind of Matador fucking green suit with flames coming down the sides, curly green hair, hair with this grey green suit on. Michael Stipe had shaved his head. It was, you could see obviously from the Losing My Religion videos, it was gone. It was obviously receding, but he just took that step, and just the sound, just that it was a dirty sound. And I know this was.
I'm telling you, I genuinely think it's the best fucking distortion overdrive sound I've ever heard. I mean, you can go back to the 50s with Fender stuff, or the 60s, and they're playing through 57 Fender Tweeds and whatnot. But I don't know how the fuck he got that sound. I don't know if it was just straight from I think he played a Vox AC30, Peter Buck. I don't know if that's what it was used in or whether he was using an overdrive pedal or whatnot, but I'm telling you, I've tried to capture that. I've got close a couple of times with a Telecaster. I think he was maybe playing a Jaguar or something. It certainly was like a Fender. I know he played Rickenbacker, but that is one of the greatest fucking overdrive sounds.
Yeah, there was something else about that album as well, that I knew that this was never going to be the same after this, with that band, and I knew that this was probably, in terms of peaking. I just felt, I don't know how they're going to be able to go on after this in terms of shocking the fans in terms of changing their style and stuff like that. And I know that New Adventures in Hi-Fi came out a couple of years later, and it was a fantastic album. I really liked it, and it was the last album that the four were on before Bill Berry, hung up his drums. And it was left with the three of them.
Who could sing as well, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about Monster it was just peak R.E.M. for me. And
I'm going to ask you that, Steve. I was going to ask you that because you are the R.E.M. guy.
Yeah.
And I was going to put it, I had an alternate thumbnail. Do you think that's their best album they ever released? Because from me, I'm more casual R.E.M. fan. I appreciate their sort of hits.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to that album. The album's fucking unbelievable. From start to finish, there's just so many different kind of songs.
I think between Automatic for the People and Monster, but they're totally different they're totally different sounds, totally different songs, different structures, production. Everything about them are so different. I think that's why I like both of them. But in terms of Monster album, I appreciate I don't want to say bravery, because I think it was just a natural progression for R.E.M. to do that, just in their nature. But it's got some glam rock in there, as you said. It's got heavy distortion. It's very gritty. It's grungy. You know, it's all. And I know there's
stuff going on as well.
As well. He'd obviously passed by this point when the time the album came out. I think they recorded it back in October 1993 till May 94. So he died during that period. And I think Michael Stipe was very close to Kurt Cobain at that point. So it's very glam, it's very garage. It's got elements of all this stuff. And you look at the singles that were released from it. What's the Frequency, Kenneth? A banging tune. You've got Bang and Blame, another fantastic track. Crush with Eyeliner, Strange Currencies, and Tongue. I know you love Strange Currencies. I always see that as a big brother to Everybody Hurts. But tonally, they're all very similar, apart from maybe Strange Currencies in terms of what they're doing, as you said, with Pete Buck's guitar work. It's very similar, but it works. It just works, in terms of the track listings. I just think the album flows as well perfectly. It's a really good album.
There's some arpeggiated stuff in there, then you go to like tremolo stuff. I Took Your Name, Crush with Eyeliner. Incredible fucking tremolo stuff going on in there. Just the guitar. Stephen, what I love about Peter Buck is it's simplistic guitar playing, but then he adds complexity. It really is simplistic. I love playing Strange Currencies. It's just arpeggiated. It's simple. It's like 4 or 5 chords, but he adds complexity with the arpeggiated stuff, and you see that Fall on Me as well and stuff like that. Radio Free Europe, he loves the sort of arpeggiated chord shapes. The chord shapes themselves are very simple, but he's just brilliant guitar player. I'm just reading about the tone. It is a Vox AC30. That's what he was playing into. Just a cranked AC30. We've seen like Brian May, the Beatles. So many classic bands over the years have used Vox AC30s. Fucking great sound. It really is.
And as you said, that it's one of those once in a lifetime moments. And I think that's something missing from today's music. It's very streamlined now, and I don't want to say instantly forgettable, because I think that's maybe an injustice on a lot of artists out there at the moment. But there's just so much. I think it's accessibility more than anything.
But you're right,
it's just
Stephen.
To consume music and dispose of it very easily as well. There's no appreciation, I don't think, as much as there used to be, because of the experience, the sort of level of lengths you go.
I just think it's a cultural thing as well. I just think modern day culture's just empty. It's superficial. It's bullshit. It's TikTok. It's very quick moving. There's low attention spans. Everything's just consumed and discarded, like you said. But what they're mining out of, where they're living day-to-day life, it's just empty. It's shit now. I don't want to be one of these people that says back in my day, because back in my day it probably wasn't much better. But it's just not the same as the 80s and the 90s and the 60s and the 70s.
Just learning through my kids and stuff like that, and just listening to their conversations and stuff like that. Nobody ever takes. I'm not having a go at that generation or anything like that, but it's just a thing. I think it's just something that's it's been moulded into their psyche, or whatever you may call it. But no one takes the time to really sit down and talk to each other anymore and take an interest in each other's sort of likes and dislikes. And you can say that about music to an extent as well, that people just want to hear the catchy tune and they want to hear the latest hits, and there's a fashionable element to it as well, in terms of,
I've lost you again,
my friend, that's I better listen to it and pretend I like it, And I've never been like that, and I know a lot of people are not like that even now, even generations now, they're not like that. They'll go and do their own thing. You have to take time, you have to invest, and really listen to the lyrics, listen to the sounds. You talked about the production, John, in terms of guitar techniques, etc. You have to take the time to appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I just don't think there's enough people doing that nowadays. John, I mentioned, I think it may have been on our last show, Pete Buck had said in an interview in the late 90s, early 2000s, that rock and roll has became the jazz of what jazz was, in the 1960s. How people looked, rock and rollers looked at jazz as the sort of genre that's in the background and old. Now people are seeing that with rock and roll, and they certainly have been for the past maybe 15, 20 years now.
Yeah, I mean, because there's no characters. You speak of Liam Gallagher and guys like that. They were the last sort of people who had personality, who would go out and do controversial things. People are just so sanitised now. It's because there's fucking cameras and phones and everything everywhere at all times capturing them. So if they step out of line, they feel like they're going to get crucified. And also, within reason, that's fine, because you don't want people acting like twats and also assaulting, fucking misbehaving to criminal levels. But you need to have a bit of rebellion in you, a bit of rebellious stuff going on. And certainly Oasis back in the day, I loved watching Liam Gallagher and guys like that, how they interacted with the press. There was not two fucks given. I don't care about you, I care about me. I have to get a house. I think that was one interview. He was late getting over to America because he was hunting for a house. And the reporter's like, but what about the fans? I don't give a shit about the fans. I'm looking after me. If I've not got a house, then there's nothing.
You can say the same for Michael Stipe, Mike Mills, Pete Buck and Bill Berry as well, John. I think they did their thing, and I don't think they cared too much about what people thought of them.
Well, I mean, also with Michael, Stephen, he was very politically fucking motivated. He was always taking pot shots at the establishment. That takes balls of steel.
Yeah.
Takes balls of steel.
John, I think that's what's missing. I think, artists nowadays are very much controlled by their record label, and they're told what to say and how to say it, and don't have an original thought in your head, basically, and you don't get bands like that now. Well, you do, but they're just not mainstream. When this came out, John, it was something just clicked inside myself, just in terms of being a fan of, at that point, I would have been a fan of R.E.M. for maybe about 7 years at this point. And I knew their stuff, I knew their style, and I liked their style. But this was just on another level. It shocked me. It really did when I saw those first opening shots and those first opening chords to What's the Frequency.
It's a great video, I know.
Which was the opening single. It was just loud. It was just ballsy. It was just everything about it. I was just. I remember my jaw just dropped. Like, what the fuck, I thought.
I mean, Steve, obviously I didn't experience it at the time, but I remember you showing me. You says, look, go and watch this video from an earlier year with the haircut and the way they looked and just the music. And then you says, look, watch that. And imagine that for the first time, that coming out. And you're right, the transformation. I think you kept the head, sort of shaved head or deliberately out of shot until near the end. Which is fucking genius.
The bald head tail, that's a reveal. Yeah, definitely was a reveal. You can see it. It was just the way it was constructed, but it was everything about that video as well was fantastic. It was shot almost like it was supposed to be shot in a garage, in a house. But it was obviously just like a warehouse or something like that with a big sort of screen showing obviously the other side of the road. And the way it was shot, the way the cameras were panning and the flashes and flickering lights, and Bill Berry had this sort of short, no-sleeved shirt on, white shirt on, and it was just, the drumming in that song's fantastic, just totally amazing. And obviously the Bill Berry, Mike Mills is coming in with that Matador suit on. I could not believe he was wearing that. I was like, he made it cool, I was like, fucking hell, man, this is the future. I can't believe this is happening, and I was only 18 at the time, so I think I was just the right age for that sort of experience, And I worked in a warehouse at the time, John, and everyone knew I was a big R.E.M. fan.
Yeah.
I'd wore the
star.
I'd wore the out of time stuff, and the automatic for the people t-shirts, and it was all very.
You had that t-shirt as well that you wore around about that time, didn't you? Fan. The one with the star, you had that star t-shirt for a long time as well. It's a fucking brilliant t-shirt.
And then I had obviously a long-sleeved Monster t-shirt. It was a white one with the bear.
I love the bear.
That's an iconic.
The bear is
and
fucking great. I was searching
Yeah.
it up for the thumbnail and someone done like a clearer version of it. There's just something about the fact it's just slightly blurred. It's just a mental image. It's just fucking wild. I love it. It's an iconic album cover. It really is. It's one of the greatest covers I've ever put together. It's so
Just
simple.
that orange, you know, the orange background as well. I know they obviously did that 25th anniversary one with the blue background, but something about that orange one, it was just fucking.
It's mental.
Just
it's a mental looking cover. But Stephen, see, going through the track list and you see what you were talking about, maybe with bands experimenting over fucking the course of their actual time and making music. But you look at this album or the actual track listing and just the experimentation you talk about it. I mean, what's the frequency kind of? It's just raucous in your face. And then you go to a tongue. Even Star 69's kind of raucous, but Crush with Fireliner, very tremolo heavy, kind of slower paced, I want to say. Strange Currencies is arpeggiated, very, very slow, sombre song. Tongue, he's just singing really high pitched, I want to say. Stipe. There's just so much variation in sound and what they're doing with the songs in this album. I don't think it's really, and you may disagree, but I don't think it's really till you get to maybe the last 3 songs where I think the standard maybe dips a little bit. I really do think from 1 to 7.
I think in terms of they're still good songs, but I think in terms of the way they're going tonally, it kind of shifts a little bit, and there's a bit of a somberness to those last songs, and I don't know, perhaps maybe it was something to do. I know that Michael Stipe had close friendships with, as I said, Kurt Cobain. He had a close relationship with River Phoenix at the time as well, and both of them passed within 6 months of each other. I think River Phoenix was October '93 and Kurt was early '94, so that would have affected them in terms of writing. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that the tone shifts slightly nearer the end
I didn't
of the
know
album.
he was close with Kurt. I actually didn't know that. But I think when you see the impact that had on a whole host of people. I mean, I've been watching videos with Kurt recently. I didn't realise he was such a big Beatles guy. And he really was inspired by the Beatles and the way they evolved. And he wanted to try and do that with, obviously, Nirvana moving forward. Sadly, it didn't happen. Whether you believe what happened with Kurt or not, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the way that he left the mortal coil, if you like. I think a lot of people think he got murdered. I don't know. I wasn't there. Not going to go down that route. But he certainly was inspired by the likes of probably R.E.M. to an extent as well. If I mean, did this come out before or after he passed? Did you say this came out after?
It was
it was inspired?
the midst of his production, John,
Yeah, so it wouldn't have been this then, but he appreciated that kind of evolution in a band, changing their sound, doing something differently. And I think
Nirvana were doing their thing.
I mean, that second album, you look at Nirvana from the first album through to the third album. I mean, the evolution's there for all to see. It's a really fucking hardcore indie, like punk inspired.
I think for bands of that age, you know, that period, that sort of late 80s, 89 to probably about 94, they just had this sort of transitional period in terms of style, and Nirvana and R.E.M. were definitely there. It's funny, John, because I think most people in the sort of early 90s to the sort of mid-90s were looking at the likes of bands like U2 as being the supergroup, and I suppose they were sort of, you know, in a way in terms of mainstream and stuff like that, but I always considered R.E.M. to be just a cut above even U2 at that point. You know, even prime U2, I just thought R.E.M. had something different. There was that different edge to them. In terms of
U2 are just...
You know, I mean, you look at Out of Time, you look at Automatic for the People in terms of genre, and it's mostly piano and mandolin orientated, Losing My Religion being one of them for the mandolin, but they had that sort of style, and to take that sort of, you know, 2-year period to write, record and produce and release Monster, the growth and the sort of transformation in that band, and to do that when they could have just played it safe and kept with the formula. I think it was Mike Love that always said for the Beach Boys, never fuck with the formula. Well, R.E.M. did, you know, and they did it bravely, and I think it paid off.
I mean, we've seen other bands.
In terms of audience and all, and they would attract a new crowd as well, with changing their style, and I think for the better.
I mean, we've seen other bands doing it. We've seen Radiohead do it, and maybe not yet the sort of plaudits. A lot of people like to say that, what's the name of that fucking one where they went electronic? It's got the sort of mountainscape. It's like an abstract.
OK Computer? I can't remember.
OK Computer was I think that's like their Peppers, Sgt. Pepper's kind of thing. I mean, there's one where they went, it was like the fourth album, and it was like electronic inspired. A lot of people went off them at that point. Some people love it though. So it's always contentious when you change up the sort of style and what you're doing, and it can backfire. We've seen that way also in more recent times. Arctic Monkeys, they've went into like a crooner character, almost like fucking type thing where they're playing these 70s crooner singers.
Yeah, I like the Arctic Monkeys.
People go back against it though.
Yeah, I mean,
and
the thing about that, John, it always feels forced. It always feels like, you know, they know they're consciously doing that for a purpose because they've seen maybe their heroes doing that, you know, in terms of Dylan changing to electric and then going to country, and Bowie forever doing it.
He's the master at it.
He was the master at it, you know. But all those ones that I'm talking about, and including R.E.M. and that, was always an organic transitional. It wasn't a transformation. It was a transitional. It was the growth of the band. They weren't manufacturing that change. It was just the next stage of their evolution, you know. In terms of the Arctic Monkeys and Radiohead, as you said, sometimes it felt deliberate. It felt too, you know.
Oh, the Arctic Monkeys, it definitely is. I mean, I like Alex Turner, but he does come across a bit twatty at times. He's a bit up himself. I mean, he famously made a speech at, I think, the Brits or something about rock and roll never does something. You look up. I'm not going to try and just fucking wanky shite. And I do like the guy. I do. He's a brilliant singer, great guitarist. What he did in the early days in particular, all the way through to maybe like the Arabella era, I like to call it. It's not fucking era, but it's a song from that album. Brilliant, but I like some of the newer stuff, but this croony shit, and then he'll go on and perform live, and it's like half the pace of the original song. I understand he's not 18 anymore, but fucking hell, it's definitely deliberate. I mean, it's put on. It's not, like you said, an organic transition, because that's where they're going as a band. It's a very deliberate choice. I mean, the Beatles, it wasn't a deliberate decision. They just evolved they matured into different people. I'm trying to think of other examples. Also, Bowie, you could say, was deliberate. Bowie was just, it was a conscious choice to take on a different persona, but that was to shake him out of a comfort zone, and he almost took on a new persona, so he could then explore different things with music. Finn White Duke, fucking Ziggy Stardust stuff, obviously, all the other things. But, I mean, it's an iconic album. I mean, it stands the test of the time, and even in an era where we're constantly talking, Stephen, about the 90s, in particular, being the last great decade for musical and maybe artistic output in general, it's just became samey. I mean, there's been some good stuff from the early 2000s, but I just feel, I mean, I'm not trying to deride all music that's come out in the last 10, 15 years, but what you touched on earlier is absolutely spot on. It's so easy to listen to, and then just, I find myself, there's a pop song will come out and I'm like, I quite like that, and I'll listen to it heavily, and then I just stop, and then a year later I'll go through my music and I'm like, fuck, I remember that, but I've not listened to it in about a year. It's just hard, intensive listening, and then you just forget about it. Stuff like this is like generational music.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, John, I was actually just looking at additional musicians that obviously contributed to the album Monster, and one that catches my eye right away, I know obviously Linda Stipe's in there, but in terms of the track Bang and Blame, which I really did like, I liked the video for it as well. One of the backing vocals, which I didn't know until I just looked there, was Rain Phoenix, obviously siblings to River and Joaquin.
I didn't even know there was a third Phoenix.
It shows the closeness, obviously, of that relationship. But yeah, I mean, fantastic, John. A great album. It's something that I always like to listen to, you know, time and time again. I always go back to it. The 25th anniversary version obviously cleaned up.
Okay, there's so many Phoenix siblings. That's crazy. I've just discovered that.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
And they've all got fantastic names as well. But I think in terms of the band, this was sort
actresses and singers. It's crazy. Sorry.
I think it was maybe the last sort of one that I would say was probably the highest quality album from R.E.M. New Adventures in Hi-Fi, which came out in 1996, was a very good album. There's no doubt about it. It was Bill Berry's last album before he left. And from there, you look at the albums like Up that came out in '98, I think. It didn't have the same quality in terms of comparison, and I did have that sense that in 1994, Monsters album was just it was just the sort of peak moment for R.E.M.
You were right, Stephen. I was 5. I wasn't 6. I'm talking shite.
I could sense it was the sort of last great album from R.E.M. at that point, sadly, because I just knew that with every band you have that sort of peak moment, and then everything after it is just not in comparison
Steve,
to it.
Even the Beatles. I mean, we love the fucking Beatles and brilliant output, but Rubber Soul and Revolver are the definitive albums, and people will say Sgt. Pepper's, but they're talking shite. It's Rubber Soul and Revolver, and they maintain, they don't really dip, but I would actually argue maybe they do dip. I think we discussed this recently, actually, where as much as we love Abbey Road and Let It Be, there is a dip off. I mean, the output isn't what it was in the mid-60s. Maybe, say 65 through to 65 through to maybe 68 White Album. It's fucking unbelievable. Like, just incredible songs. They're dipping off a little bit near the end. Obviously, George is coming into his own.
Road and Let It Be are very good albums, John. We talked about this, but there is a disconnect with them. Yeah. There's no doubt about it, that in terms of the songwriting process and even the relationships within the band are very fragmented. And even the sort of B-side to Abbey Road, the collection of songs that were spliced together, there's a sort of forced nature to it. Yeah. There's nothing organic. People like it.
I mean, Lennon admitted that.
But it's not my cup of tea. I'm not really into that kind of thing. Segments of throwaway songs.
Lennon literally said that, didn't he? He said it was just unfinished songs that we used as an excuse to get them out, get rid of them. Yeah. That was it. I mean, it worked well, to be fair. They did put it together well. It was
I still look back at R.E.M. and I think about them and I go, something, just I'm glad to be I was alive to experience these albums firsthand. And
Steve, you got to see them live.
Yeah, I got to see them live.
Setting, Stirling Castle. You says it was late summer.
Yeah,
light rain.
Bill Berry wasn't there.
But
as Michael Stipe said, a three-legged dog is still a dog. It's a great quote. So they still had the magic, but it was just something about that album, 1994 for me. And it carried through to 95, obviously, with the release of the singles from the album. It was just a magical time to be an R.E.M. fan.
Absolutely. And also prior to this sort of, they did do a new deal, didn't they, with another recording label? Was that like the Radio Free Europe and Fall On Me era? It was late 80s. I mean, my favourite R.E.M. song is probably Fall On Me. I absolutely fucking love that song. It's incredible. Love playing it.
I was at the age group, John, where, at that point I would be listening forward to their stuff, and it wasn't till later on I went, there's not more stuff coming out from them, so I'll go back to the IRS catalogue. Yeah. And that's exactly what you said, John, just working your way back through Murmur, etc.
Is it Gardening at Night? Is that the drummer that's singing? Am I right in saying that?
I'm not sure who sings that one, John.
Maybe talking shit because I'm seeing Michael Stipe on the mic.
That was on some kind of it wasn't a greatest hits, it was like a best of sort of B-sides, wasn't it, and stuff?
Yeah, it was from 87, they're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so many, I mean, again, you've got multiple fucking people singing in the band. It's not just obviously Michael Stipe is the singer, but am I right in saying that
they were all writers? Yeah. I don't know about singing, John. I know Mike Mills took his hand to a lot of the bassist with the glasses. He sang a lot of the songs as well, Near Wild Heaven.
Because there was definitely a second voice in one of the songs on Monster, but it was higher pitched. And they were kind of like singing back and forth. I can't remember the one. I need to go back and listen.
I think it might have been Mike Mills.
Yeah.
It probably was him, because I think he was a secondary singer in the band.
Great voice as well.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. But,
really amazing.
I mean, it's crazy, Stephen. I mean, you'll feel it more, obviously, because you fucking were listening avidly to them back in the day. But 30 years, you think of 30 years. I mean, I'm noticing it more and more now. Like 20 years ago was 2005. I vividly fucking remember 2005 like it was yesterday. And it's just mad when you see things like Stand on the Shoulder of Giants, fucking monster, 30 years old, 25 years old. It's fucking crazy how time's flying. And it's wild. I mean, someone said something recently. I think it was, God, what was it again? God, who was it? There was a bigger gap, I think, between the Beatles splitting up and maybe Oasis or something doing an album and they were talking about the Beatles than there is between Oasis. But fuck it, that can't be right. Between those albums coming out and now, it's crazy. It's fucking mental. I don't know. I can't remember the exact thing, but
it's funny because you know you're absolutely right, and I think when I look back at you know years gone by and you think of those sort of time differences, the sort of period, you know, just to give an example, like when Free as a Bird came out with for the Beatles in 1995, it was only 15 years after John Lennon's death, but when I was living that time, I just think 1980 seemed like so long ago. You know, I know it was only 15 years ago, but it seems like miles ago.
Yeah.
You know, but when I think of 15 years now, it doesn't feel that long.
It's because
weird,
obviously as you get, when you're younger, time literally does flow slower because you're experiencing new things all the time.
Yeah.
There's definitely a science to that. I'm pretty sure they says that also it's not literally going slower, but it feels slower. The way you experience the world does feel slower. So that time gap, 15 years, feels like a fucking eternity. But as you get older, and you've already learnt so much, and then new experiences aren't as readily
it's a good
available.
point, yeah.
Time just, it does seem to speed, and it feels like it's fucking going by in the blink of an eye. I always sort of judge myself based on John Lennon. Like, where was John Lennon at this time? And I've been doing this since I was like 17, 18 and listening avidly to the Beatles for the first time properly. I mean, I knew of the Beatles when I was a little kid. I always knew of them, but it was the fucking hits from the early days. But when I first went right down a rabbit hole, I always used to think, right, what was John doing at this point? Because, I mean, I've literally got a painting of the guy in my wall, fucking absolutely, the guy's my icon. And I was thinking yesterday, I'm 36 now, John would have been probably coming off that lost weekend, the year or so in LA. He's now getting back on the horse again, getting ready to maybe think about recording. Was that after Walls and Bridges and Mind Games? It was, wasn't it?
The time was 36. He was a dad again with Sean, so he had the 5-year period, obviously, you know, just looking after Sean. So
because 73 was Mind Games.
He had all that stuff behind him, all the stuff that already happened.
The Beatles, you know? All those incredible fucking solo albums, Plastic Ono Band, Imagine, Mind Games, Walls and Bridges.
Go to America, go to India,
go to
Australia,
Japan, going all over the fucking world. So I like to compare myself and I'm like, holy fuck, this guy lived about 50 lives in the time what I've experienced. It's fucking astonishing. So you're right, time, you're best not thinking about time and how it flows. Certainly.
I mean, you're looking at, but I mean, that's the whole theme of this video today. It's, you know, the shows have all been about anniversaries and stuff like that. So you do look back. You do look back, you know, and you think of, you know, it's been 20 years, 25 years since Standing on the Shoulder of a Giant. And you're thinking, really? Because I can remember clearly when that came out.
Stephen, it's been 20 I think it's been 22 years since Franz Ferdinand's first album came out. Take Me Out and Dark of a Matinee. I think that was 2003. It was 22 years ago. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
That's fucking terrifying. That's terrifying. Let me tell you. Stephen, it's nearly 20 years ago since we went to Crete. I remember the hotel I went to in Crete. I remember that holiday like it was yesterday. I remember Flanders. This is all going over the head of other people. German guy kicking about with Speedos and a bum bag, as we like to call them. I don't know what German people call them. That storm when we were in the pool, people were laughing at us, pissing down. I'm like, I'm already wet, I'm in the pool, why would I come out? Makes no fucking difference, it's warm. Nearly 20 years ago. Time is flying at a fucking terrifying rate. But like I says, in terms of artistically, that's why I always love Live Forever. It's my favourite Oasis song because it sums up this thing perfectly. I don't think that's what Noel meant when he penned Live Forever. But your the impact you have on other people, the memories, what you do to inspire and touch other people's lives through your sort of musical output, artistic output, in terms of film, directors, what they put out, that lives forever. That's how you create a legacy. And albums like Monster and, to a lesser extent, Stand on the Shoulder of Giants, that's not the biggest fucking or best Oasis album. I'm not trying to put it next to Monster. Monster's fucking head and shoulders above that. If they're standing on the shoulder of a giant, then Monster's on the fucking
Oasis?
Monster's on the Burj Al Khalifa. Let me fucking tell you. But I mean, it really does. These are generational albums that will be passed down. They'll live forever. So they'll never be forgotten. As long as people are listening to them, and I'll continue to fucking listen to them. Well, maybe not Stand on the Shoulder of Giants. Monster. I'm taking pot shots. I was praising that album with fucking high heavens at the start. I do like it. I like it. It's just not definitely maybe. But look, I digress. Let's go round it up.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on Oasis announcing that 25th anniversary? 25th. That's right, isn't it? 25-year anniversary for standing on the shoulder of giants. Try saying that when you've had a couple down you. It becomes increasingly difficult as time goes on. Is it something you're interested in? Are you going to buy the physical vinyl limited edition version of the album? What's your thoughts on time flowing by? Life flows on within you and without you, as George Harrison famously sung. How right he was. Thoughts on Monster, R.E.M. Anything you want to share, put it down below in the comments section. That is a place to put one's thoughts. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications straight to your eyes. Do the same thing over on Twitch. Follow button, notifications button over there. Nearly falling back on my chair. It does go back way too far. And all that's left to be said is until the next time, thank you for watching us. Bye-bye.